I never imagined that cancer would lead me to the love of my life. It's not the kind of fairy tale anyone dreams about, but it's mine, and it's real. It all started when I was 26, fresh out of grad school, with a world of opportunities ahead of me. Then came the diagnosis: non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The word cancer echoed in my mind like a death sentence, but I was determined to fight. I wasn't going to let it define me. My first appointment at the oncology unit was overwhelming. The waiting room was filled with people at various stages of their treatment, and I felt an icy dread settle in my stomach. I tried to focus on the bland posters on the walls, but my anxiety was palpable. And then I met Dr. Adrian Hale. He wasn't my primary consultant, but he was part of my medical team, a hematology registrar with a gentle smile and kind eyes. He introduced himself with a handshake that was firm but warm, and in that moment I felt a tiny flicker of hope. Dr. Hale was different from the rest. My primary consultant was brilliant but curt, focused more on facts and figures than on my emotional well-being. But Dr. Hale, he seemed to care about me as a person, not just as a patient. During my chemotherapy sessions, he would drop by to check on me, and our conversations would drift away from medical jargon into more personal territory: books we loved, places we'd traveled, our families. It wasn't long before I developed feelings for him. It was impossible not to. Adrian was everything I needed in those dark days: steady, compassionate, and deeply human. He had a way of making me feel like everything was going to be okay, even when I was bald, sick, and scared out of my mind. And there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when I felt something from him too. A lingering glance, a soft touch on my shoulder, the way his voice would soften when he spoke to me. But we both knew the boundaries. He was my doctor, and I was his patient. Even the friendship we formed was already walking a fine line, but neither of us wanted to step away from it. After 8 grueling months of treatment, I was declared in remission. It was the news I'd been waiting for, but it came with a bittersweet realization: my time with Adrian was over. My care was transferred solely to my consultant, and Adrian moved to another province for further training. We promised to stay in touch, exchanged a few texts and calls, but life had a way of pulling us apart. My recovery, his career, the distance, it all became too much. Eventually, the messages stopped, and I accepted that it just wasn't meant to be. 6 years passed. 6 years of moving forward, trying to build a life after cancer. I got a job in marketing, made new friends, and even tried dating, though nothing ever seemed to stick. There was always a piece of me that felt unresolved, like I was waiting for something or someone. Then came the night of the medical ball. My friend Laura was a nurse and had an extra ticket. I went as her +1, expecting nothing more than a fun night out. I had no idea my entire life was about to change. The ballroom was dazzling, filled with people in elegant gowns and sharp suits. I mingled politely, sipping champagne, when I felt someone's gaze on me. I turned around, and there he was, Adrian. My heart skipped a beat. He looked just as I remembered, if not better, confident, composed, with that same gentle smile. For a moment I was frozen, unsure of what to do or say. But he made the first move, walking over to me with a look of pure disbelief. "Emily," he said, as if he couldn't quite believe it was me. "Adrian," I replied, my voice catching in my throat. The rest of the night was a blur. We ditched our dates and spent hours talking, catching up on everything we'd missed in each other's lives. He told me about his further training, the hospitals he'd worked at, how he'd often thought about me but wasn't sure if reaching out after all those years would be right. "I never forgot about you," he admitted, his voice soft. "I always wondered if we'd ever get another chance." His words took my breath away. For so long I'd convinced myself that whatever we'd felt back then was one-sided, a product of my vulnerable state. But here he was, telling me that he had felt it too, that he had never really let me go. We spent the next few days together, and those days turned into weeks. The connection we'd once had was still there, only deeper now, more mature. There was no longer the barrier of doctor and patient, just two people who had been given a second chance. Adrian was 11 years older than me, and it was something I noticed more now that I was in my 30s. But the age gap didn't matter. If anything, it made him even more perfect for me: wise, experienced, and patient in ways I desperately needed. It didn't take long before we were inseparable. Adrian was exactly what I'd been waiting for, and I was what he had been missing. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. Even my brother, who was initially skeptical about the whole doctor-patient dynamic, came around when he found out Adrian was once his boss. It was hard to argue with a love story as genuine as ours. 5 years have passed since that night at the ball, and every day I'm grateful for the second chance we were given. Life with Adrian is everything I could have hoped for and more. We're partners in every sense of the word, having built a life together that's rooted in trust, respect, and the kind of love that can only come from having faced the worst and come out the other side. Cancer took a lot from me, but it also gave me something I never expected: Adrian. And now, every time I look at him, I'm reminded that sometimes the most beautiful love stories aren't the ones that start perfectly, but the ones that are born from hardship and grow stronger with every challenge they face.